Hey guys, I'm Zach, or Warlock Garden Games, and today we're trying out a new type of video. This video won't be scripted or anything, it'll be a little bit more rough and off the cuff, but I figured I want to try out this new style and see if you guys like it. This video will be the start of a series, and if you guys end up liking it, we can continue to do it and try it with different things. This video, we're going to talk about what goes into making a level. What I mean by this isn't like level design concepts, I mean like the literal things that are here. And so I'm going to talk about what each one is and what they do. Starting up here at the top, we have Fall Forest 1. This is the name of our level. This is a Node 3D. And it has a script because it used to do something, but it doesn't actually do anything right now. So all this is just like the origin. This is just the point. And technically, this is the center of our world right here, over here off in the ocean, but there's a reason for that, and we can talk about it later. So the first node we come across in our hierarchy is a navigation region 3D. And basically what this is it tells the enemies where the ground is. And so that's how they know how to walk around from far away. All these blue lines you're seeing, that's the navigation region. So this is all these blue triangles is everywhere where the enemies can walk. That's how they know how to get around. Under the navigation region, we have a stone bridge. The stone bridge is actually its own other scene. So if we go into that, we can look at it. So we have a path 3D, which essentially is a collection of points. It looks like we have 2 points, if I'm looking at this correct. Yeah, point 1, point 2, okay. We have 2 points, this red point and this green point, and they form a line to each other. But we have the entrances and exits of the line curved, so it makes a curved line between these 2 points. And then we have 3 different shapes that are being extruded along the line. The first shape we have is this rectangle down here, rectangular prism, and it's being extruded, well actually just the rectangle, but the rectangle is being extruded along this path. And then we have the right rail and the left rail, and they're both being extruded along this path as well. So if we go back, we have our stone bridge, and then we have our terrain 3D, which is our plugin, how we make our whole environment, our sort of like rock and grass and sand we have there. And so we can just sort of paint with this. For example, if I took like this brush, the flatten brush, and then I get like a height of there, and I change the brush to be like, I don't know, like 25. And say I go over here, you can make this whole area and shape this whole area differently very quickly. So let's just undo that. Next up, we have this wooden bridge over here. So this bridge is done completely different than our other bridge. Maybe it would have been smart to make it like a thing where it just extrudes like that. But this is actually one solid piece. And if we look at it, we can see this bridge here. This is a static body, which just means it can have a collision. Then we have our actual visual for the bridge. This was made in Blockbench for the model of this. So this part is this is the floor of the bridge collision shape, and then the rails are just rectangles as well. We actually don't have any collision with these holes on the bottom, so you can just go through them if you wanted. The next thing we have on our list is the enemy spawn manager. So there's a few things going on, but essentially what this is it lets us spawn our enemies when we're throughout the game. This is how we sort of take care of enemies coming in and leaving and stuff. And so currently how it works is we can check on what enemies we want. Right now I was trying to test other stuff, so I just have enemies turned off completely, but we can turn on or off the eye bats and the pumpkin crabs over here, and then we have the visual effect for when they spawn in. If we go back to looking at it, we can see a little bit of what's going on here. We have 2 object pools, one for each type of enemy, and then we have our credit timer, which is set at 20 seconds. And if we take a peek at the code a little bit, essentially what's happening here is we get the number of enemies. If there's no enemies, we tell our credit timer to stop. And what that does is it makes it trigger automatically. Credit timer equals 0, then we call this. So if there's no enemies, we want to spawn enemies basically. So if you kill all the enemies, more enemies will spawn faster. And there's so many credits that we have. So we start off with 1 credit, and then we add a credit every time up here. And so every time we add a credit, it can spawn 1 more enemy. So the first wave of enemies that spawn, it'll have 1 enemy. Then it will spawn 2 enemies, then 3 enemies, then 4 enemies, then 5 enemies, then 6 enemies, all the way up to 10. Once it gets to that point, the enemies will then level up, getting more health and damage, and the spawn credits will sort of reset. Next up, we have our init spawn manager. The init spawn manager takes care of where the player can spawn. That's essentially all it does. So it gathers all the possible points on the boat that the player can spawn, and then it just picks one and has them spawn there. The respawn manager takes a look at all these little cubes, these green ones specifically, and it takes note of all their locations, and then it deletes all these green cubes. And so whenever we go off the map, we can just find the closest respawn point and then push us back to that point. The teleporter manager takes note of each teleporter when it spawns in, and then it links each portal to another portal so that each one can go back and forth to the same portal every time, and it sort of handles all that logic between linking up those 2 specific points. The whale spawn manager essentially is the same thing as the respawn point manager, but it takes a look at all these blue things and takes note of their position, but it also takes note of their rotation. So that's why it's like the cube. So the blue part's like the green cube, but then we have this pole sticking out to show us we're pointed this direction. So this means whenever the whale boat comes up, it'll be at this point and it will be looking towards that direction. The spawner node manager, again, it's sort of the same thing, but this one's a little bit more complicated. So we take note of all these orange cubes where they're at, get their positions, and then we actually spawn in stuff at all these locations. But if we look over here, we can see sort of the stuff we're spawning in, and we can, so first off, we can choose to enable trees if there's going to be trees that spawn in. And then if there are trees, we can choose which kinds of trees we want. So eventually there will be more trees, and we can enable, disable it depending on the map, and then like add in different trees and choose which ones we want. Down here we have the spawn objects, so the different possibilities for each scene. We have teleporters, the wooden chest, shops, different trees, and then mimics. Our next node is just the ocean, so it's just handles this whole ocean. We zoom out, you can sort of see the ground under this, our terrain, and then the ocean. It's a little bit harder to see, but it goes out for a while. I think this circle is probably as far as it goes. That's why there's the grid after. So it's not infinite. It just goes really far out around where you are. If we come back down here, though, we can actually see with the ocean being here, and then if we hit this, that's what it looks like without it. So the ocean's just gone. boom, 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 boom. Next up, we have some folders. Basically, all these are each of those points we talked about. So the first one, we have the whale dock points, just these blue ones. Then we have the respawn points, these green ones, spawner nodes, the orange ones. Then we have our painted wizard tower, which is just this up here, this little building. So it's a wizard tower, it's got a roof, door. You can look at this too if we want to. So it's a static body. We got our roof, collision, collision, collision for all these different little things. This is collision for the tower. The actual model right there. And then another collision. Door right there. Little fun fact. Originally this was just going to be a tower by itself, but I thought that was kind of boring, so I added the scaffolding. And then since there was scaffolding, I figured there should be a door. Added that on. And I was like, it's still missing something. So then I made this building, and we can actually look at what it looks on the inside. It's kind of boring on the inside. There's nothing in here. Nothing going on up here either. But looked kind of boring with just the tower. So then I added this building. This building was actually based off Finn and Jake's treehouse from Adventure Time, where they have like their big old treehouse and then the building at the bottom. Another little fun fact, there's always a guaranteed chest right here. So this chest is just up there at all times. Right here we have audio stream player, so no matter where you are, you'll just always hear the ocean around you, which makes sense if you're on an island. Right here we have the sun and moonlight. So if we look at this, this is just a node 3D, so just a position, and then this position will work like a pivot, and then we have each light, and we have some code handling it. But if we go back, we can, if we rotate this, we can see it sort of creates a day and night cycle, and then the lighting is all affected by that. So we can sort of move this wherever we want. We can set the initial daytime, the day length, how many seconds we want, minutes. Right now I have it set it to 5-minute time. So if we set it to 0, it's right at sunrise. I like to have the sun up a little bit, that way I can actually see a little bit of what's going on. Next up we have the world environment, and there's a lot going on here, but essentially we have our environment, and then we can choose all the settings about it. So we have the background mode, we can set the sky. We have the actual sky, which this is pretty complicated, but essentially what's going on here is we have this crazy shader with all these different settings, lots of stuff going on. And what we do, we have this shader, so it's a panorama sky, but we take that in the shader and then we put other shaders over it. So we have our panorama, and then we have like the clouds over the panorama as well. And that's all that's going on in the sky. But then we have some other stuff enabled, like SDFGI, which has to do with the lighting and how that works. And then like we have glow enabled to do certain things. And volumetric fog. This is enabled, so there's actually no fog that you can see, but it's there technically, and the reason for that is so we can use it on different effects. I actually use the fog on certain effects, like the ultimates for the Nucleomancer, where you see like the nuclear explosion and there's like the cloud rising up. Part of that is volumetric fog, as well with the Hydromancer's ultimate. We use volumetric fog to give the effect of being underwater. And then finally, we just have all these proton scatters down here, which doesn't appear to be working properly right now, but if we go here, we can do force rebuild, and there we go. So these proton scatters are taking up the grass, and how they work is we have our initial node with all the different things. So we have it projected on the Terrain 3D. The other stuff is basically default stuff. And then in it we have the different items we can choose. I have 2 different ones in here, which you only need one in there for it to work, but I have two because I want the two different things. So we have that type of grass, this type of grass, the spiky and the rounded ones. And then they have different rates, so I assume it's like a percentage thing. So you have like the proportion of how much, so we have 100 in that one and then 10 in the other. So there's less spiky and more rounded ones. And then we sort of have these main shapes. It's kind of hard to see, but there's like a big rectangular shape that's placing these here. And then these red ones are actually removing it, so it won't spawn in these areas. That way it doesn't really clip as much with all the spawner nodes that we spawn and stuff. That's about it. That's everything that goes into making a level for my game. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if you want more content like this. Comment down below, like the video. If this does well, we could also explore what goes into making other various things in my game. And so you could have a sort of idea of how the different moving parts sort of work together to form these different things. Comment down below with any questions you have about the game, or even your own ideas of what I should add or change. And maybe you'll end up seeing it implemented in game. I look forward to seeing you guys' ideas and how this game can evolve over time. Let's make a great game together.